Yeah.
I'm blessed, and I know it. The meeting didn't really start.
I'm looking around to see if I recognize anybody. We still have a lot of the, I don't know, I call it the high school vibe where we have nice tables and the girls. Yeah. We try to mix it up, but somehow it doesn't. It doesn't always work that way. Yeah.
Morning, everybody. Welcome to Rotary for Monday, May 12th. We got a good one for you today. Here to do our prayer pledge and four-way test, Mr. Pat Rafferty.
Dear God, thank you for this money. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, I can say. Dear God, thank you for bringing us together today. Thank you for bringing us in fellowship. Let's remember all those that don't have what we have, all those that have no homes, all those that have no food, all those that have no country. Please endeavor to help us to aid those through the efforts of Rotary. For this we pray. Amen. Where we test. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Four-way test. First.
Second.
Third.
Goodwill and better friendships.
And fourth.
Will be beneficial to all, sir.
Thank you, Pat. All right, scene one, do you have any updates? Anything you want to announce?
Our collection for this quarter is for Emergency Shelter of Northern Kentucky. There's just a few items that they use all the time that they really could use some more of. And so we're collecting ground coffee, non-dairy creamer, granulated sugar, and cereal. And there's samples over here if you don't know what those things look like. And so we'll be collecting these for this month and for the month of June. So please bring them in and whichever meeting you can remember. There are flyers on your tables and some more over there if you need a reminder to take with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Art.
All right, John. Hey, we have some guests, but they didn't all sign in, so we'll let them, we're gonna call them on the carpet today. How's that? All right, that's good. The Reds had some more games. As poorly as they're playing, they're only 3 games out of first place. So that tells something about the rest of the league as well. So we gotta have hope. Let's have hope. All right, and belated happy Mother's Day to all here. Mothers, thank you very much. And obviously, you have some yank with the big guy upstairs. I think it was the best dry day we've had in weeks. So happy Mother's Day. Thanks, Sheldon. All right.
All right, so we do have a board meeting after next week's meeting. Let's see, dues are due. So I know invoices went out on Friday via email. I don't know if we're printing them at any point, but we will get with you if we have not heard from you. Coming up, volunteer opportunities. So here actually this coming weekend, at the Boone County Extension Office, they're going to have a community service fair similar to the Serve and Socialize fair that was at the library. The Memorial Day parade, I think, Dawn, are you putting your convertible in there? Outstanding. Okay. So we need some candy. And then I have volunteered to raise the Rotary flag if anybody would like to join me in that. We got the clay shoot coming up. That is the Saturday before Father's Day. It is a blast, literally and figuratively. If you don't know how to shoot, we'll teach you. So some of us are pretty good at that. And then the Boone County Fair, we take admissions at the fair. That's coming up, June 25th. We're still in June. And then we got our golf outing coming up October 3rd, and the following day, we've got, an Ohio looking for a, spot to do that. But we'll need some boots on the ground for all those opportunities. Yes, sir.
One more thing, on June 14th, after we blow things up, we're gonna get together at the Triple Crown Country Club for the District Foundation celebration.
Okay, outstanding. All right, we'll add that too. All right. Don Vollen, happy anniversary. 17 years worth there. Gary Moore is not here today. All right, happy bucks. Anybody got any happy bucks? All right, well, I got 3 of them with this found money that Pat didn't pick up. All related to guests. So number 1, little Miss Emily Day in the corner back here. Number 2, Liz Hanson from Kaka. Met you at the Serve and Socialize fair at the library, and here you are today.
That's right.
Outstanding. So
Thank
number 2. And then number 3, bring out the finest robes and put a ring on his finger and shoes on his feet. Dr. Randy Poe. Dr. Poe was just Mr. Poe when he introduced me to the Board of Education back at R.A. Jones Middle School. So anybody else? No? All right. Now for the main event. Julie, would you like to introduce our speaker?
So I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Jeff, where did he go? Oh, he's in the back. Dr. Jeff Hauswald. He's a superintendent of Boone County Schools. He joined us in July. He started after Superintendent Matt Turner retired. And so he comes to us from Indiana.
Sorry.
A family of teachers. His dad was a science teacher for 30 some years. But then he went into math. And so he was a math teacher, has been superintendent for 14 years, over a vast number of experiences. He has a he has a doctorate in educational leadership from Indiana University. And we're very pleased to have him here with us in our county, leading our great district forward. So, turn over to him.
Thanks so much. I'll try to keep it as informative as I can, but also as informal as possible, just to allow us to engage together so that you're just not listening to me recite where maybe you have these pressing questions that you would like to have answered. So I'm not just up here amongst interlocutors. You tell me when you're ready. Is it ready?
Yep.
Can you go there? See, it's gonna cut off some data. Can you do presentation mode? Look at me taking over.
Yeah.
Or it's not possible. Well, then you know what? It is what it is.
I think it is what
You can guess some of the data. So anyway, thank you for having me today. I appreciate the summary. It's a privilege to be part of Northern Kentucky and Boone County. As Julie mentioned, I've been in Indiana my whole life, so 50 years. So now you know how old I am. We call it level 50. I've been told recently, just call them levels, and it sounds like you're accomplishing more, right? So I reached level 50, and it was time for a change, and it's been a blessing for my wife Cassie and I to be here. I grew up just right across the river from Louisville, so I always was in the Louisville media market. I can remember growing up, my mom said, "Her journal never has any news about Indiana." So we never know what's going on in Indianapolis State House. It's always about Frankfurt. So I feel like I just grew up knowing about Kentucky, but just living on just right on the other side of the Mason-Dixon line. And then as was pointed out, I went to IU. So I am a big Hoosier fan. So the IU UK rivalry used to be really strong, and then UK got better, and IU got worse. And so I don't think UK cares about IU anymore. So but
Bobby, we miss him.
I that's true. I do as well. So but anyway, then a pretty traditional path for superintendents. I did teach math and then did a whole bunch of the administrative things. I had a mentor superintendent who was one time superintendent in Bullitt County and then had a kind of circuitous route back to Indiana. He was from Jeffersonville. And he said, John, he said, you just gotta walk in everybody's shoes. It's the first thing they're gonna check to say, are you familiar with, good teaching? And have you done this and that? And so he just moved me around and I was patient and I trusted him and he was right. So I've been a high school administrator. I was a high school athletic director. I was a coach. I remember one time he came, usually it was in April. April's when the superintendents would start planning and he always kind of wanted to keep the door locked. I remember in April, one time he came and he said, next year, you need to go spend some time in elementary. And I said, oh, no. He said, oh, yeah. So I was elementary school principal, probably the favorite job I ever had. It's one of, such an important job. Our teachers in primary, the work they do is just incredible. I think I used to think that the harder the content, the harder it was to teach it. I was really naive. I used to talk calculus, so that has to be harder than algebra. But the reality is our toughest work is in our primary grades. It's just incredible. And we'll talk a little bit about setting some long-term goals to help more of our students be ready to learn. And to be ready to learn is significant because, you think that there's this wide range of abilities in a calculus class. Not so much. There is a range, but where the real gap exists is in our 5 and 6 year olds. I mean, everything from students who've never seen a book or held a pencil or had any directions to those who are, from privilege, who, have studied in Rome the summer before their kindergarten year. So anyway, you've got these range. It's true. That was not me, by the way. So it's tough work and I had a real good chance to come to understand that and appreciate that work. And on bad days, you always went down and sat in the kindergarten room. And when we had sub shortages, they'd say, first thing I'd say is, what grade is it? Kindergarten. Okay, I've got to brace myself. 5th grade, I got it. So I was assistant superintendent. And then in 2010, my superintendent said, you need to go be a superintendent. I remember going home that night and telling Cassie, I said, hey, Dr. Burke wants me to apply to be a superintendent. He said, I won't get the job because I'm really green, rookie, no chance. But he said, I need to get the experience. And I said, what do you think? And she said, well, if you're not gonna get the job, you might as well go for it. So, where this. So I drove up. I'd never been out in northern Indiana. So I drove up and anyway, so I lived in Kokomo for about a decade and was superintendent there, urban education, really loved it. And then Bloomington for 3 years. And so 14 years combined. And then it was time for a change of place. And we were looking at options. My wife and I are pretty mobile. And we kind of maxed out all the benefits of Indiana. And Indiana really wasn't supporting education, quite honestly, like they should. And they were really reducing funding, far less than inflationary rates. And Kentucky was a much better funded state, as were most others. Teacher growth in Indiana was 50th out of 50 states over the last 2 decades. And so it was just the right time. And so it's a great place to be. And so I've been here now for 10 months. So and I've gotten to know many of you. And we love the community. We love the rolling hills. We love to be outdoors. You'll see us out with our dogs dragging us through the different parks. And it just feels like home. I'll tell you one funny story before we start. My dad, who's always, he grew up, he was a teacher, but he was a farmer. And I grew up on a family farm of, wheat, soybeans, corn, baling hay, and Timothy alfalfa mix hay and straw, and about 1,200 head of cattle. And my dad's 80 and he still farms. We just had a conversation over Mother's Day about culling the herd a little bit. Dad, it's just a lot of cows. But you see how that conversation went. So, so anyway, great admiration for my family. And, but anyway, he said, he was thinking about it. He said, so when you work over there, are you going to live over there? I said, well, of course. He said, so are you going to become a Kentuckian? I said, well, of course I am, Dad. I said, I already already learned my old Kentucky home, I'm good. I know how to make an old fashioned, all that stuff. And and so he goes, okay, he said, well, that's fine, but when you come home, you just might want to back in the driveway so people don't see the place. Little things, right? So I let it go. I figure, it's, my dad won't even wear blue because it looks like UK. So, anyway, this feels like home. It's been a wonderful experience. And so what I thought I'd do is just give you a couple updates on Boone County Schools, a little bit on the economic side of it, a little bit on the work we've done this past year, really the work together. And then from there, you can ask questions. So this is gonna work, I've been told. So just in terms of who we are, and there's probably a way to scroll. You know what? I'm just gonna say what's on the screen. So if you haven't had an update recently, we have 3,700 employees. I don't know why we didn't send a PowerPoint. I'll make a note of that. I apologize. So we have. There you go. So you learned something. We have a future student back here.
What's that?
So we can teach you how to use that.
Yeah, so 3,700 employees, 20,600 students. So, and of course, looking at the demographics, I meet with our judge executive regularly. We know that's just ticking up pretty steady. There was a slight dip, of course, during COVID, but it's just moving up at, a couple hundred students a year. We have 6,300 students of color. We have 2,000 English learners, so 10%. 10% of our student population are English learners. And if you think about it, that's a different number than, because our students tend to be fluent in English 3 years. That's the younger they are, the more quickly they are fluent. So that number is not students who, you're not labeled EL forever. You're labeled EL until you test proficient at a certain level in English. So that number is always being replenished, quite honestly. About half of our students free and reduced lunch. And it's always a good question to ask. What's our general fund budget for a year? Almost just south of $300 million. Ask that question, sometimes people get 4 or 5 million, like that. So, and we're the 5th largest employer in Northern Kentucky. Something it's kind of hard to see, but in essence, Boone County is the highest performing large district in Kentucky. So, matter of fact, there was a recent report, and you can look it up. It was issued by Harvard, and it compared 2019 to 2024 academic performance. There were only 100 districts that have grown academic performance in 2024 from before COVID. So in other words, eliminated all COVID learning loss. Only one school district in Kentucky has done that. It's Boone County. So, and we are the 10th largest school district in the United States to have done that. And that's significant because the larger it is, of course, the more barriers, the slower it is to move. If you have small sample size, it's easy to see large swings. With a sample size like we have, it's really difficult to you don't tend to have the large swings. You move a little more slowly. So we are now performing higher in 2024. Of course, 2025 data is not out yet. The students are taking that test right now. So we're performing higher than we were in 2019. So it's clear that we are a pretty big bang for the buck in terms of your investment. I'm going to just spotlight about 2 or 3 things for each of these. When I had the opportunity to begin serving on July 1st, there was an adoption of a strategic plan. So I'm going to connect to a few of these goals. The first is the most important. It's a world-class education. It's making sure that we're accelerating learning for all students. A second is having an empowered workforce. Third is stakeholder engagement. And then the fourth, operations and resource management. So the first thing that we've tackled, and this comes because of some allowances at the state house over the last few years. As you know, Kentucky is a pretty strong site-based state. And if you're not familiar with that, you're going to just kind of shake your head and say, what in the world? is this. So, recently though, the state in their, and I would applaud this, it happened before I got here. But in the efforts to make sure all students have high quality instructional resources, have allowed at the district level some control over the broad curriculum that are adopted. And so in our school district, really prior to this year, we had no uniform curriculum. It was all site-based. And the problem with that is if you go back 2 slides and you look at our poverty, 50% poverty, and you look at our English learner population, right? And you look at, we have high mobility. And we have intramobility and intermobility, right? So it's like intrastate. So, but we have a lot of mobility between our schools. And when students are forced to move from one elementary school to another, many times 4 in a year, right? There's learning loss. How do we reduce the learning loss so that we can make sure we keep that achievement gap small? Well, one of the ways is trying to have seamless transitions from one school to another. And what's happening is our students are going from one school to another, and there's a whole different set of books, whole different set of different pacing guides, and I mean, we want to respect some autonomy in our schools, but we also know that there are just some basic frameworks that need to be the same within our district, because when they're not, it more adversely affects our priority populations. So for the first time, we basically said within 4 years, we are going to be a school system instead of a system of schools. And there's been some growing pains there. I mean, there are high performing, low poverty schools. That's I'm getting an immediate response. The question is, who will be the second they'll start crying? Besides the mom. So anyway, we just never had this. So this has been a lot of work. And there's teachers that have, had a certain curriculum the whole time. So they're switching that over, and but this is most beneficial to our students that really most need those smooth transitions. And there's still differences for learning new teachers, new students. There's still learning loss, but if we can minimize it, and in terms of taxpayer dollars and efficiency, when the students move to these 4 schools, we got 4 resources, which can be $150 per subject. Think about that, because they don't all move at the same time. So if we have greater efficiency in terms of having one standard curriculum, we don't have to buy 4 of those resources. So it also saves us money. Next thing that we're doing, we talked about the 10% English learners. We'll be the first school district in Kentucky by the start of next school year to have the technology for students to have real-time translation in the classrooms. This is significant because if you look at our learning loss, our students, we have, so if you think about a dual language model, they used to call it, where you're trying to help the students learn English. That's the most important. And that happens through immersive learning. So that happens at recess at with the more rigid components of English. But here's the problem. If we don't have a way for the students to also simultaneously learn English, or math, social studies, science, they're falling behind for those 2 to 3 years waiting to learn English so they can learn math. And so what we're seeing huge learning loss for our English learner students who have the ability to do math. They just simply need those basic instructions. They just need to know the basics. Then we also want them to know the basics of US government and history, right? And of science. And so we currently don't, and I'll tell you, as a district office, I make our admin get out into the buildings once a month, and we meet in the building and we do a little takeover. So we just let the office staff meet for professional development, do some stuff on customer service and training. We just take over the school. It's good. I get to, either answer the phones or do lunch duty or whatever. It's wonderful. But I was at one of the elementary schools, the teacher came up to me and she just looked, she had the look. I said, "What's going on?" She was just, "Dr. House, it's rough here." I said, "Well, talk to me about that." And she said, I have great kids, but she said 9 out of 20 of them do not speak English. And she said, so they're just bored. They're disengaged. It's chaos. It's just chaos in my room. And she said, and I can't give them basic instructions. And we're just waiting for them to learn. And they spoke, I think, 5 languages. So it's not like you just find a, we have one of our growing populations, they speak Chuckese. I didn't even know what Chuckese was. Second largest island in Micronesian. So, so we don't have translators. So the point is, we have invested in this program now so that our students will be able to learn the core subjects. There's also some safety components. If you think back to when you took French or Spanish in high school, oftentimes the beginning of the class was in English and the end of the class was in English. It was just setting that today, here's what we're going to do. This was the homework you're supposed to turn in, whatever. Setting the stage, then we move into French for me. It had a huge impact on me. And then I could maybe ask for a hamburger in French. And then at the end, we summarized it back in English and we said, just as a recap, this is what you need to do for tomorrow. This is the preparatory work, da, da, da. And then, of course, in times of safety, they would communicate in English. So it's really just that. It's setting the stage of math and then transitioning to the work and summarizing it. So this is a huge investment, and this will be in every one of our classrooms. It's a microphone device, so it goes through the speakers. It also helps auditorily. Randy, you're familiar with this program. But it also allows students to put on earbuds and receive translation. So it's a game changer for our English learners. A couple other things we're doing. I'm gonna move now to the second goal, empowered workforce. I'll just give you just a small snippet of things that we're putting in place this year and next in terms of academic achievement. Empowered workforce. When a person resigns, it costs more to replace an employee than it does to keep them. But yet we generally only have a few stories with resignations, and that when someone resigns, they'll send that email, and they send it to anyone they know, maybe even their mother. I mean, anybody, but me and the board, and it's like all of this stuff that's just been, bottled up for 15 years. And so why don't we get those stories earlier? And why don't we understand what are their concerns? And can we correct some of those pieces, improve the workplace so they don't resign? So it's not this. So we've started this year for the very first time, stay interviews. Stay interviews is the opposite of an exit interview every 5 years. So we've interviewed more than 400 employees this year, set database. Of course, at the end, there's open conversation. We're just gathering, and it gives us a huge amount of data. So every 5 years, everyone gets an interview. They get them on their, what we call their speed limit years, 5, 10, 15. I don't know how fast you all drive. So, and then at the end, they get a gift, and a thank you and that kind of thing. I did the stay interviews for everybody in their 30th year. I had booked a day and just sat down, and the story, and people have been crying and laughing. It was just an incredible experience. But that data is giving us insights into what we need to do to improve our workplace, right? And is it pay related? Is it benefit related? Are there workplace conditions? Huge amount of data. And again, we save money by keeping our employees. And the happier they are, happier our students are. We know that to be true. All right. Next, we increased salary and wages over the last 2 years. We've done a 7.8% increase. And the positive thing is that's higher than the rate of inflation. So if you look at kind of average inflationary rates, 3.32 and 2.8, of course, we didn't go a year back beyond that. So sometimes wage increases lag inflation. We know that. So nonetheless, it's a significant investment, and you're making an investment. This year, our property tax rates dropped because of the increasing AV. But I always point out to people that every dollar you spend on public ed, the return on that investment is $20. It's the greatest return you can get in a community because it's much cheaper to invest and get them across that finish line than it is to provide those services from 18 on. Huge expenses for as you're well aware. And so it is a great investment, but we do take those dollars seriously. We're very efficient. We're lean and mean, if you will, and our graduation rates above 96%. Another thing that we did was we did targeted, probably for the first time. It's very unusual. It's most school districts do across what we call ATB raises. That's just across the board raises. We like we like everything to be the same, but what's sometimes lost on us is the same percentage is not the same amount of money. And so when we mapped out our wage increases over the last 2 decades, our wage gap was growing. Because if, just for example, if you were at 20,000 and 40,000 20 years ago, all right, and you do 10% over a couple years, 4 years, 10% of 20,000, right, is 2,000. 10% of 40,000 is 4,000. So what's happening is your gap is widening. So you're spending more and more money on the top of the scale, right? Which means that your beginning wages and your beginning salaries are compressed, which makes it really hard to attract new employees. So we looked at a lot of data and we set a goal. For the first time, we went to with our local union bargaining table, and we mandated that we had 2 beginning teachers at the table because we felt like that voice was missing from the conversation for years in the past. So that they could tell the stories and understand that, in many cases, they told us they're living in their parents' house. They couldn't afford, they didn't see any path to home ownership. So we started putting some pieces in place to try to help them. And what we did was we basically reduced the slope for the first time. A slope is, this is the math teacher, so forgive me. If this is the bottom and this is the top, we anchored the top and we raised the bottom, which reduces the slope. And by reducing the slope, we added $100 in an inverse relationship so that we can increase our beginning teacher salaries by 3,000. So we're one of the first school districts in Kentucky to have our rank 3, which is our, bachelor degree, 0 years experience, over $50,000, which is a huge attraction for us in the region so we can get these teachers. It increased their beginning teacher pay by roughly a total of like $4,500 for people with their steps. So it's made a huge difference. And kudos to our Teachers Association, our union, as well as all those involved in decision-making progress. What it did was it closed our gap by $1,832, which meant that on average, we gave our lowest paid teachers $1,832 more than our highest paid. Something that's never happened in Boone County schools, honestly. Just hasn't. So it's the right thing to do. Thank you. One person. So I got one crier and one clap. I see tiebreaker coming up. But we also then reciprocated that into our hourly wages and guaranteed that every hourly employee got at least $1 an hour wage increase versus a standard 3%. So you either got a 3% or $1 an hour, which was greater, which took most of our starting salaries over $15 an hour. So one last thing we'll talk about on workforce. We also implemented our first annuity match. In most states, there are multi-levels of retirement benefits. In Kentucky, there's kind of just one. Social Security is kind of out. We have the defined pension. There is a state annuity, but no required participation, and there's no local annuity. So it's really one layer. So what we're trying to do here is add a second layer of retirement benefits. For all teachers, we implemented a 1% match starting next year. But we also implemented a new teacher recruitment benefit so that in addition to the 1%, new teachers on years 0 to 4 will get an additional $2,000 match. So the benefit to that is that if you think about you're making $50,548, so let's just say $50,000, right? You put in $500 and we give you the match, a 1% match, $500 plus $2,000, right? So now you put in 500 and we're giving you 25. And so in 5 years, you put in you put in $2,500 and we give you $1,250. So you have $12,500. So you have $15,000 in an annuity by the age of 27 if you're a traditional student. Now, what you know is if you continue to contribute 1% actuarially, that could, and I'm not past performances indicate future results, and I don't give financial advice, but that could give you an additional layer of retirement of approximately $750,000. So for our beginning teachers, it's a long runway, but it's the right thing to do. And if you take a 4% distribution off that, it's an additional $30,000 to help pad and supplement the teacher defined retirement benefit pension at the state level. And these folks that are in tier 4, it's needed. So here's a kicker to this. There's a 5-year vesting period. And what we know to be true is that for teachers, that tend to leave after 2 and 3 years. That's the most common time to leave. And going back to other strategies that cost more to hire to replace you than to keep you. So there's a 5-year vesting period. And by having that, it's another one of those retention strategies that we've put in place starting next year. Real quick, I'm gonna move a lot faster. For stakeholder engagement, we've implemented a new communications program. And the reason for that is families across the district, when I did the listening tour, said, just pick one. Listen, we've got 4 kids, 3 schools, and 6 different passwords and 6 different, and it's crazy. So anyway, we're moving to a system the district's paying for. It'll save site-based some money, and pre-K through 12, one system. It also has translation built into it for families. It has texting features that caches those texts, helps protect our teachers and our students. And it really disincentivizes and moves us away from some of the traditional texting, which can lead to grooming and things like that. So it definitely overall enhances the system and allows our parents to have one platform for all communication. Couple other things. Yeah, I'll just move on to this. Operation resource optimization. We talked a little bit about the speakers for translation. Speakers will also now provide safety signals, kind of like if you squeeze your cell phone, immediate alert to the office from anywhere. So it'll show that there's an emergency on a lunchroom or playground or a classroom. It maps it all out. Anytime we go to lockdown, it sends the message now. It will update all of the computer screens, all the TV monitors that we're putting in place, and also it provides translation. Because, if you're an English learner and this is new to you and that alarm goes off, I mean, what do? Do you get under your desk? You go to the shelter? Do you go to the corner of the room where you're no visibility and direct line of sight from the door? Or do you run outside? I promise those are all different things. So there's a huge safety enhancement that we're putting in place through this. Also, we'll modernize all of our intercom systems. Our intercoms are aging in many of our schools. And it's costing us $50,000 to $100,000 to update each of those. So we're able to update all of them and have more targeted messaging. So a lot of efficiencies come through that. We're a very, I say this word a lot, but overall, if you look at the state of Kentucky, we have one of the largest student to school ratios, we're pushing on 1 to 900, which means we, on average have less office staff, less principals, right? Which allows us to put more money towards classroom. So we have big schools, and that's doable, especially in lower poverty schools. We're not at a school with 90% poverty, fewer students ready to learn. That might be a little bit harder. So there's a disclosure there. Lastly, we took a look at our allocation review. We have really low allocations, student to staff, given our poverty. So we made some adjustments there, which has allowed us, again, to put more money. This year, we eliminated 1 cabinet position, another 2 district admin positions, 19 school-based positions, which we use that savings to create our annuity match for our staff. So we want to keep our student to staff ratio low, but we also want it to be reflective of good practice so we can increase our wages. And then basically looking ahead, I'll just tell you that we have a lot of work to do on standardizing our curriculum, improving our communication. I kind of hit the ground running this year. I have coffee with all the schools and engage with all the staff. I have lunch with students every month. And that's where you really learn things. They know, they have their finger on the pulse. I always tell beginning teachers when I meet with them before school starts, I always tell them, I give them 2, sometimes more, but at least 2 pieces of advice. And I always tell them that when you go in that classroom, number 1, you can't fake sincerity. They know if you're sincere, and they can read you like a book. And number 2, you can't demand respect if you don't give it. Positional authority will get you nowhere. And if you're insincere, sarcastic, non-authentic, and non-respectful, you might as well just fold up the tents. It's not known. So, I know that by having conversations with the students, they have insights into our schools, things we need to improve, priorities. Honestly, priorities are sometimes different than parents. 2 and 3 generations. And sometimes, school leaders, board members, they might be 3 generations removed because education changed very, very quickly. And we know that we have to keep up to that, keep our kids engaged and make sure they're prepared for the jobs that are going to exist in tenures, which, or possibly half of them will be different. Trying to get more people wanting to become school superintendents. So that's just a little overview of what we've been doing. So the economic impacts we have, and the work we've done in the last 10 months. I can't speak beyond before that, but Randy can. So, it's good that he's here. And, you know, he's been,
Just so you know, Gary's a.
Gary, we met last time for the student scholarship. So most recently, Randy and then Gary. But you know, they always, you know, you stand on the shoulders of giants. And this district has always had amazing teachers and amazing leaders. I learned that firsthand. So it's really makes my job easier to transition when you have such sound leadership and people so supportive of public education. So, yeah, it's a great place to be. We got like 5 minutes, so I'll take questions or comments or, yeah, sir.
Actual languages are in the system. I know I have a daughter that taught kindergarten at Florence. Baltic languages and went to Northwood, like going from one extreme to the other. These are them. But Aquila is like 35 languages.
40, actively 40 languages.
It's amazing.
It's up and down all the time. That's right. And so that's why it's, you know, you just simply can't find the people, right, that speak all those languages. So.
Oh, teaching kindergarten, what she was always impressed with is the other English speaking kids help the kids that couldn't speak English.
That's exactly right. They learn from each other. Yeah. A burst of learning is without doubt the best way to learn English. So absolutely. Yes.
Monty.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
So question, we have a lot of kids that graduate from the program in education.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of kids that stay in this area.
Mhm.
How intentional are you to make sure those kids that graduate from NKU do have opportunity in our schools here?
Oh, well, very intentional. And so, you know, we have a lot of partnerships. So it starts with our dual credit programs. Many of our seniors now are taking dual credit at one of our area schools, whether that's NKU or Gateway. Many of the students stay in regional. So as you know, in our college and career pathways and our graduate our profile of a graduate, we have students learning more and more about their skill set, jobs in this region, Northern Kentucky, because more staying there. And we have really strong connections in education. You know, we house many of the student teachers. We're constantly, you know, for example, at Ignite, one of our 6 threads is education. But we have close partnerships, and we want students to come. We need more employees. We want them to come back to us, but we most importantly want them to get good paying jobs, and whether they go college or vocational training or into a career, you know, we're making those connections because number one, we got to get them across our finish line, and number two, we have to get them a good paying job. So and the career focus, whether that's immediate or post secondary education, is just becoming stronger and stronger, and those relationships is so important. It's a great question. Yeah.
In the past, teachers have always brought back a lot more homework, you know, from the school. And also they oftentimes use their own resources to buy school supplies. Has that been addressed over the last few years?
Well, I can't speak to the last 2 years, but what I can say is that, you know, our teachers aren't, I think I understand your question. You know, our teachers are not paid enough to use, you know, 10% of their salary towards supply. So we have protected our site-based funds, which used to buy the supplies. We've recently also added some additional funds for our higher poverty schools. Our lower poverty schools can have a bake sale and raise $20,000. Higher poverty might raise 200. So we're really trying to balance that out. Some of the things we talked about, we have greater purchasing efficiency. So our communication platforms, our standardized curriculum, we are taking those expenses on at the district office, which also frees up some of the site-based money to make sure those supplies are available, so that our teachers have what they need, and they don't have to go into further debt, if you will, to teach. And I mean, our teachers are, you know, they tell me stories all the time, you know, so they, you know, there might be and, you know, we have FRIS, so we have community liaisons in all of our buildings to try to help meet the needs of our students so that our teachers, you know, but it doesn't mean that there aren't teachers who go out on weekends and buy a pair of shoes, because it's quicker and the urgency, and our teachers have big hearts and they do what's right. They take care of our kids.
The other part of the question was, my wife used to be a teacher for many years.
In around
Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Texas.
Yeah.
And she would work 3 hours after school, you know, doing work that normally would be done in the business day.
Mhm.
So I was wondering with artificial intelligence coming in, or is there any way to prevent them from bringing home work home?
I don't know if we can prevent it, but you're hinting at some of the solutions. I know that whether it's AI, whether it's other analysis or new technologies are making some of that work more efficient. So we can more quickly ascertain what students know, what kind of reteaching needs to happen, how it changes. In elementary school, we have centers, so imagine you guys are all different centers. So just simple uploaded an analysis of an assignment allows us to not only know what students know and don't know, but to change the assignments within centers without students knowing that, Randy's table probably their table probably has to have a lower level reteaching than probably the gifted table over here. But we can do some different grouping strategies quickly with the use of technology to advance that and hopefully reduce the workload on teachers. And it doesn't mean there are teachers that are there every night until 8 o'clock. But we don't want them to feel like they have to be. Work-life balance is important. And again, without good work-life balance, and for me as well, my wife's always reminding me that hot meat kettle. So she's always saying, you need to also prioritize. So my new thing is now I put my phone in a drawer on Sundays. It's hard, but I do. And then I try to do a little digital detox in the summer for a week or two. So yeah, but it's really important, right? You can take care of the overall mental health and physical health of our employees and help them with work-life balance as well, particularly our young teachers. All right, other
Thank you
questions?
very much.
Thank you all.
All right, so next week we've got Kentucky Senior Medicare Patrol. That sounds like someone might be getting arrested. That'll be here, and then afterward we'll have our board. Team 2 is our, so between now and then, go have lunch with a Rotarian.
How are you?